Welcome, dear Thriver to Thriver TV. Today, I want to talk about overcoming narcissistic abuse and overcoming addictions. And you may be really surprised to find out today that they are both closely related. Hence why I've linked these topics today. So we're going to take a deep dive today into what trauma bonding to a narcissist and what addictions really are and how to overcome them. Because is it true that you are always going to have to try to manage an addictive personality or the haunting of addictions that are always pulling at your life force and your attention and your power? Or can you literally go free? The latter is the truth. And today I'm going to explain to you how and why. But before we get started, I'd just like to remind you, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I do a new video release. And please remember to like and share these videos with others if they resonate with you, so that they know it is possible not just to barely and merely survive narcissistic abuse, but to truly thrive after it. Okay, so let's get started with this very important piece of the conversation. What are false sources and what do they have to do with addictions? A false source is a self-medication choice. So what it is, it's a person, a substance, or a pastime to try to get relief from internal trauma. So maybe you get triggered and you have anxiety or depression. So you could go for an alcoholic drink, or maybe ringing a girlfriend and dumping how you're feeling all over her. Maybe it's reconnecting to have sex with somebody, or eating a cheese sandwich, or even worse. Or smoking a cigarette, maybe getting on social media, going shopping, whatever it is, or taking a pill. Any outer choice is an attempt to numb out what hurts. We're trying to distract ourselves or fill an empty, gaping hole with some kind of comfort, or maybe be mind altered so that we just can't think about or feel what hurts anymore. Narcissists are a false source because they pretend to be the person in our life who is going to be a solution to our fears or our unhealed stuff of the past, the feelings we have of loss and inner emptiness. Narcissists pretend to be gods, but yet they are really punishing overlords. They don't take our trauma away. And in fact, as a narcissist infiltrates your life and captures your attention and your energy and becomes the center of your universe, they add to your trauma as they suck your life force dry and destroy your life. The trauma gets worse. But let's get very clear about this. This is no different to any other false source. So things like drugs or smoking or shopping, gambling, overeating, going towards sugary junk foods. These really are attempts at comfort to try to save ourselves from trauma, but yet they damage and destroy us further. They add to our problems and our brokenness. Why is that? Because just like a narcissist, these things are actually false sources. So how do we get addicted to false sources? Firstly, we're struggling to have an inner relationship with our own soul or spirit, which is the true core of ourselves, where we can handle and work through our fear and pain, anxieties and depressions, to completion. And by assigning our drug of choice, whether it be food or drink or nicotine or obsessive behavior or running towards a bad person, by assigning that as our attempt to self-soothe, and it fails, we end up doubling down. We get even more trauma bonded to this thing or this person to try to fix the escalating negative energy and powerlessness that we're feeling inside of ourselves, especially when we get out of control with addictions. And when we pick up the choice of self-medication, initially it seems to work. So that person, food, drug, drink, or activity provides momentary relief. You get a hit of endorphins and a feel-good chemical. It's a high because you momentarily escaped the core trauma, the root of the trauma. That's what the high is. And it's very addictive. Now, let's say, as an example, the core root, the real cause of the trauma is abandonment. And it gets triggered off in your now moment because it's lying within you from your past. It's actually a part of your inner identity that you haven't yet healed. And because of that, you're locked into realities today that match that unhealed trauma. You are connected to situations and people that are going to represent more abandonment in your life. People who are going to trigger and rip open this wound over and over again. And when it happens, it's horrible, it hurts. And to try to escape this terrible emotional pain, you reach for your addiction, the person or the thing. And often you're running into the exact arms of the person abandoning you, trying to get them to stop abandoning you, to try to self-soothe and try and get relief from the pain. And let's say that that person doesn't accept you back. Maybe you're going to try and chase another to fill that hole, or you take up the drink or the drug or the food or the pastime to try to numb out. So initially, whatever your choice is, it may distract you from the unresolved abandonment trauma. It puts a Band-Aid over the top of it. And just like taking a sharp stone out of a shoe, the relief is huge and it feels so good in the moment, yet it's short-lived because your metaphoric shoe has still got holes in it. More stones are getting in, and this is your trauma because it hasn't been healed yet. It still exists. So you only escaped it for a moment. That's what the relief was. But the endorphins of that relief now are an addiction, which means that you're addicted to the choice of self-medication, this false source that's only a Band-Aid. It's not a true solution. And what's really interesting is about our false sources. If we have unresolved trauma, our choice of false sources will be in the vibrational level of the trauma. So they're lower level choices. They're not healthy choices. Yet we may kid ourselves. We may say that, my healthy choices are exercising or good food or good diet or obsessive health or spiritual practices. And even if they are so-called healthy choices, we will turn them into being unhealthy. We'll get obsessive about it. It'll be all or nothing diets or over-exercising or total over-dedication to spiritual practices to the point of dogma or obsession that are incredibly damaging to our inner being, because it's like we're trying to smash and bash ourselves into shape, which is not what our inner being needs at all. So the issue is, the more that we get triggered with our unhealed trauma by people and situations that are more of the same, and that's how the quantum universe works. So within, so without, we keep choosing and interacting with the bandwidth of the composition of our inner being. And if it's unhealed significant trauma, then we're going to have toxic choices and people in our life. And the more we're triggered because we haven't healed yet, the more we double or triple down with the addiction to try to self-medicate the original trauma, meaning we're going to eat more, drink more, smoke more, shop more, social media binge more, have sex with bad people more, break no contact with narcissists more, and obsess about these people more. It's a vicious cycle. It's a spiral into absolute destruction. Now, reversing all of this has everything to do with recovery from narcissists and recovery from every addiction that you have ever battled with. But to get to this level of reversal, you have to understand that the addiction is actually not the issue. The core trauma is the issue. And focusing on the addiction equals how to lose, because the addiction is a symptom. It's not the true issue. And this is why a lot of people may give up a particular addiction. And then what they do is they switch the witch for the bitch, and they just take up another addiction in full gusto to try to self-medicate the unhealed trauma. The true issue is the unmet, unhealed internal trauma, the unfinished business that is hijacking your life with emotional triggers. And you may say, okay, well, that means that I've got to learn to manage my triggers. But that's what's been getting you into trouble, trying to manage it, trying to distract yourself or self-medicate away from these triggers. Whereas a much better choice is to be able to literally dissolve these internal traumas so there are no triggers and you live free of them because they're no longer wedged within you. Such is the power of quantum healing, where you can literally go free from trying or needing to having to numb out unhealed internal trauma, which means that you are no longer going to have a need for false sources and people who were a toxic match for these unhealed traumas. The truth is, detoxing the internal traumas takes away all urge of addiction. I'm going to give you some examples. And these are examples that are happening in our community all the time. Okay, so we'll call this lady Mary, and she's missing Joe the narcissist, and she can't stop breaking no contact. So every time she hears or feels that Joe is moving towards another woman, she panics, she reaches out to him, she goes to him, she tells him whatever he needs to hear for her to keep him in her life, and she has sex with him because she's trying to do anything she can to stop him moving on with somebody else. And even though she gets some relief in the moment with reconnecting with him, of course it doesn't last, and she hates herself, and her self-respect is in the toilet, but she can't stop herself doing it. And every time she's doing this, she's destroying her inner being and integrity and trust with herself more and more. Now, people on the outside might just say you're love addicted, you're addicted to a narcissist. But really what's going on is the unhealed trauma within Mary of, if a man replaces me, I can't survive. Many women have this internal trauma. I had it. It's in our collective zeitgeist. It comes from our past lives, from our forebear females before us, genetically and energetically. And many, many people in this community have ran back to narcissists because of that exact unhealed inner trauma. I used to do it too. And like Mary, they may have had the experience of a mother who suffered an adulterous father, or maybe one that even left for somebody else, putting great survival strain and terror on the family and on you as a young child. Unless Mary addresses this inner fracture, she will continue to be trauma bonded to Joe until eventually the cruel final discard, probably. But then she runs a huge risk of continuing to play this unhealed trauma out with future narcissists. I want you to realize that trauma bonds are responsible for addictions, and trauma bonds to people happen because of unhealed trauma that matches what that person is delivering you. The next example, Bob, we will call him, could not stop trying to please Marjorie, the narcissist. And it didn't matter what he bought her, what he did for her, how much he told her that he loved her. She was never happy, and it was never good enough. He was addicted to trying to please her, regardless of how terribly she treated him, including leaving him, going back to exes in her life, and then coming back to Bob again. Bob's issues were also not about love addiction or addiction to a narcissist. That was the symptom. The true problem was the unhealed trauma of, if I can't please her, she's never going to love and accept me. Because Bob had gone through this with his narcissistic mother, who shamed and blamed him for everything. She was sick, and he felt guilty that he couldn't save her. So here he was in the exact same pattern again, which is what we do, feeling hopelessly addicted to Marjorie. But until he healed his unfinished business, that addiction was going to continue. Now let's look at my example. I was addicted to the narcissist through a lot of unhealed wounds. I had things that were quite common with many of us, such as I need a man to survive. I had terrors of abandonment. I had security and survival fears on many levels. I didn't believe I could make it alone in my life. And many more. And it wasn't until I turned inwards with quantum healing tools, specifically quantum freedom healing, that I was able to get free of him and have no addiction to him. And ironically, I had tried to heal these known traumas cognitively for decades. I knew what they were, but they still existed inside of me. And knowledge is not power. The wisdom of how to release yourself from inner programs is what grants you the power to live free of them. However, even after getting away from the narcissist, I still had more to go. I had a terrible nicotine addiction, and I tried everything. Hypnosis, patches, Champix, so many things to try to get free of smoking, and it didn't work. And I felt that it was unbreakable, and I felt like I was never going to get free until I went to the core root of this with quantum freedom healing, and I turned inwards to load up and release what was really keeping me trauma bonded to cigarettes. And what it was a terror of no one is coming. I'm all alone and no one is coming. And cigarettes were a dummy for me. They were my way of holding on to something or getting some comfort when I felt despair or alone or any significant pain or even a heightened excitement. So once I cleared that trauma out of my body, I had no connection to cigarettes, no addiction, no desire. It was gone and it never returned, which was astonishing after a 40-year almost addiction that had nearly destroyed my entire life. So I hope that this makes sense to you. I hope this has given you hope that you realize what is really going on with your trauma bonds, aka addictions, and how they're being fueled and generated from unhealed trauma from within, and that there are true solutions for you to get free of this. So the link that I'm putting up with this video is the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program, NARP, which is the Quantum Freedom Healing 10-step process for you to get free from your trauma bonds to a narcissist and any addiction at all. And I hope that this has made sense. So until the next one, keep smiling, keep healing, and keep thriving, because there is nothing else to do. Lots of love. Bye-bye.